My name is Joel, and today I'll be doing something that is really interesting to look at, and that is the 9 players drafted before Patrick Dangerfield. As the old saying goes, drafting isn't exactly a science, and today we'll be looking at the players drafted before him, what they accomplished in their careers, and where they are now, and how or why they were picked before Patrick Dangerfield. In preparation for this video, I looked at mock drafts from around the time, and by that I mean I looked at 2 I could find from around 2007. A lot of people around that time were saying he would fall to around 11 or 14, so you know, hindsight's always 20/20, and at the time I'm pretty sure people thought that's a little bit of a reach by the Crows. Even though Dangerfield has turned out to be an extreme success for the Crows and the Cats, he wasn't looked as to be the surefire prospect, and today we'll be looking at who these players were, starting with the number 1 pick, Matthew Cruz. The general consensus surrounding Matthew Cruz at the time that he was just pretty much a lock to go number 1 first overall, coming out of Northern Knights in the TAC Cup. From what scouts saw, he looked to be a reliable ruckman and even a dual threat up forward. And considering both Mark Murphy and Bryce Gibbs were the first overall picks in the last 2 drafts, it probably made sense that you want someone who could tap the ball down to them and let them get to work. As of time of this recording, Matthew Cruz has played 189 games and scored 94 goals with that average disposals of 12.8, alongside 21 hit-outs per game, which is pretty good. Unfortunately, a lot of injuries has really affected his career. As of recording, he is out for, I think, about 4 months due to an ankle injury he sustained in the first game of the year. So even when football comes back, he might not be back this year. And that's pretty unfortunate, because he has had some pretty good moments. In fact, talking about injuries, he has only played 1 season where he has played 22 or more games, and that was in 2009. Imagine if they'd taken Dangerfield with the number 1 overall pick. Imagine that midfield of Mark Murphy, Bryce Gibbs, and Patrick Dangerfield. That's sickening. But then again, they would get Chris Judd in a couple of years, which spoiled. But I don't particularly disagree with the pick of Matt Cruz, because when you have 2 budding superstar midfielders, you probably want a ruckman to more or less tie it all together. Otherwise, if they're not getting the ball. The 2nd overall pick was Trent Cotchin from Northern Knights going to the Richmond Tigers. Pretty much the consensus was that if Cruz went first, Cotchin would go second. At the time of the draft, the consensus was that the leadership skills, the precision ball handling, and the top-notch decision-making would make him an easy 2nd overall pick to go with. And for full disclosure, if there's anyone that is really going to challenge Dangerfield as someone who they would be happy to keep, it's probably Cotchin, obviously. He is already a 3-time Jack Dyer medalist, Brownlow medalist, 2-time premiership winner. So honestly, I don't think the Tigers would really want to give up Cotchin for Dangerfield. Or either way, I think it's a win-win situation, to be honest. They're both very good, and with Dusty Martin coming in the draft a couple of years later, I think they'd be happy either way. Richmond fans would be happy either. With the 3rd overall pick, the West Coast Eagles selected Chris Maston. Coming out of East Fremantle, Maston co-captained the Western Australian team in the Under-18 Championships. And it made real good sense that West Coast would pick him at number 3 because he's a local boy, and even most mock drafts said he's not going any lower than 3. His career, however, he's serviceable. He played 215 games, scored 70 goals, has a premiership medal. But for a number 3 overall pick, now, again, he was a good contributor, seemed like a lot of people liked him, But just imagine Dangerfield, Shuey, and Gaff, and you really, really, really think this was not an optimal pick. Now, with the 4th overall pick, the Melbourne Demons selected Cale Morton out of Claremont in Western Australia. Now, this one is from picks about 4 to 8. It's pretty much Whiff City from here. Not saying that anyone could have succeeded in the Melbourne system at this time before they just completely bottomed out. But yeah, Cale Morton wasn't put in an optimal position. He looked to be a good midfielder that could, with a precision kick that could open up forward lines while also moving forward and kicking a ton of goals. He only played 70 games for the Demons before being traded back home to West Coast, and even then he really didn't crack the side all that much. Now, would Dangerfield have thrived in the environment that Melbourne would become? Now, would Dangerfield have done better? Who knows? I don't really want to think about it because Dangerfield could have been out of the league by 2013, just like Mr. Morton. Next up, the Western Bulldogs selected Jared Grant from the Dandenong Stingrays. The Bulldogs' thinking for this pick was pretty much they wanted a tall forward who could pretty much help with their elite smaller forwards like Brad Johnson and Daniel Jen Syracuse at the time. So they needed someone who could take the focus away from them and be a tall threat up forward. Now, Grant's high point for his career was playing 20 games and scoring 29 goals in the 2010 season. In 2015, he was delisted, and just think he was only a year out from the miraculous run that the Dogs made in the 2016 final series. Gotta hurt, really. Now, obviously, they'd probably take Dangerfield over Grant in hindsight, especially with the crop of very, very talented young midfielders that the Dogs have at the moment. Imagine having a still really strong Dangerfield with the likes of Bontempelli, McRae, and Bailey Williams. It would be pretty spectacular and might have gotten them another shot at the finals. With the 6th pick of the draft, the Essendon Bombers took David Myers from the Perth Demons. Myers, kind of like Cruz, in that he has played quite a bit, but unfortunately injuries have really, really limited his career. In his first 3 seasons, he only played 22 games, and then when he started to get into the groove of things, playing back-to-back 18 and 19 game season, the double whammy of an injury that only kept him to 2 games in the 2015 season, and then the suspension at the hands of WADA in 2016 really put the grinding halt on his career. In his final 3 seasons with the Bombers, being 2017, 18, and 19, he played 38 games, probably one of the more consistent stretches of his career. Unfortunately, he could only muster 140 games before retiring at the end of the 2019 season. Well, he seemed to be a liked fellow around the club, so even though he didn't have as much success as some of the other players in this draft, which were surprisingly deep, he still seemed to have a good enough career and left on good terms with the Bombers. Now, obviously, you'd probably take Dangerfield over Myers in hindsight, but can't really do much about injuries. With the 7th overall pick, the Fremantle Dockers took local boy Reece Palmer out of East Fremantle. Unlike most players in this list, and even Dangerfield himself, Palmer pretty much was in the fray as soon as he was drafted, even winning the 2008 Rising Star. He had a pretty successful first year, then only played 2 games the year after due to a knee reconstruction. And then when GWS came to town in 2012, he was one of the first players to sign with them as a restricted free agent. During the 2015 off-season, he was traded to the Carlton Blues, and unfortunately, he played a single solitary game before being delisted at the end of the year. It's a bit weird to see someone's career start out so strong and then just kind of fade away. He did manage to play 123 games and score 95 goals, most of those being with the Giants, but just, it never really clicked for him outside of that first year. And honestly, in hindsight, imagine the tandem of Fife and Dangerfield. That probably could have won them the 2013 premiership. With the 8th overall pick from the Geelong Falcons, the Brisbane Lions selected Lachie Henderson. Henderson's time in Brisbane was pretty brief. He only played 15 games over 2 seasons before being traded to Carlton, where he's had his longest run in the league for Brendan Favola. That worked out well. Anywho, moving with Lachie Henderson, at Carlton, he played 102 games and scored 101 goals, being shifted back and forth from backman to a forward line option before requesting a trade at the end of the 2015 season to be traded to Geelong, in which Carlton responded with that by making him sit out the last three games of the season before being traded to Geelong, where he has been, it's been okay. He's played 54 games, and he was unfortunately delisted at the end of last year, but was given a lifeline by being re-rookie. Brisbane, with Dane Zorko and Patrick Dangerfield in the midfield, would definitely be a much more preferable option. And now, with the final pick before the man of the hour, with the 9th overall pick, the St Kilda Saints took Ben McAvoy from the Murray Bushrangers. Now, McAvoy has had a pretty decent career, all things considered. Probably his most successful period was when he was traded to the Hawks, where he helped them win 2 premierships in 2014 and 2015. Now, I'm not saying that McAvoy has had a bad career, but imagine, if you will, Patrick Dangerfield being plugged into the 2009 and 2010 grand finals. He could have probably helped St Kilda get over the hump in those 2 games, or at least one of them. But unfortunately, this is just another big what if. And now for the 10th overall pick from the Geelong Falcons, Adelaide took Patrick Dangerfield. Now, I think just reading off his resume pretty much solidifies why he probably should have been taken either 1 or 2 in hindsight. He is a 7-time All-Australian, Kaji Greaves medalist, the 3-time Kaji Greaves medalist, 1-time Malcolm Blight medalist, Brownlow medalist, Lee Matthews Trophy winner, and pretty much one of the best players to watch play the game of Australian rules football. He has played over 250 games for both the Crows and the Cats, and has been a leader on the field. So, in summation, the draft really does create winners and losers, and unfortunately some of these teams lost out pretty bad on a really good player. Again, that happens with hindsight. I mean, Nat Fife was taken 20th overall in 2009. Should probably do a video on that. Anywho, downtime between football being played, I'm gonna do more retrospective videos, looking at old drafts and probably doing a redraft or 2. So keep your eye out on the channel if you're interested in any of that kind of stuff. If you need to discuss stuff with us, join our Discord, link in the description. We are always up for chatting. And remember to subscribe to AFL Access, click the notification of all new if you need notifications for all new content. And remember, eventually this will be over and we'll get back to footy. Until then, we'll see you next time.